Thank you. So I suppose the first thing that does come to mind is that word sadhana, which is such a huge part of my world and what I teach for people, and bringing consistency into a daily spiritual practice. And whether that consistency is simply showing up every day, or whether the consistency is around the particular practice that you decide to do, I think that having consistency is really important. It is important for us now in this phase of evolution to have a spiritual practice. I truly believe that we need a spiritual practice in order to kind of manage the intensity of energy that it is to be alive right now in 2022, and all that we're kind of faced with, from the influx of information that's always there on social media, and from the news, and from all of the things that we can learn, even, and from podcasts. I mean, it can sometimes be slightly overwhelming, the amount that is almost kind of out there and potentially kind of drawing its way towards us. And I think that what the sadhana does is it allows you a pocket, a spaciousness to be discerning and selective with what you take into your world. And it also allows you to have a spaciousness to decide what action you want to take in the world. And for me, the consistency of the sadhana helps me live my life. And this is something that I try and also teach my students, is that as powerful as the experiences are in your daily spiritual practice, because you can transcend, or you can tap into states of love, or you can feel really grounded and in your body, in your sadhana, until it becomes a state of consciousness that is so embodied that it flows out into your life and becomes part of your being and who you are, and it affects your day-to-day world, then it isn't necessarily working. Like having the two as separate is in some ways missing the point of what it is to be in this human incarnation. And so for me, the consistency of practice allows me to not escape from the world, but rather to be in it with more presence, to be more grounded, to listen to a question like that and not have a thought process going on of an ideal of what I want to be asked, and not focusing on you. It allows me to be grounded, not just with other people, but in my body as I move through the world. So that we were talking before, even when I am busy going through periods of intense work, which I have been the last 3 months, to always be kind of grounded in my body and checking in with what I need physically and in the physical realm. So for me, a sadhana, a daily spiritual practice, also allows me to kind of move into the world with a sense of sacredness, so that there's a reverence in even mundane tasks, where I can do my best to bring a sense of sacred into my life, so that it isn't just a time in my day which is 1 hour, or if I'm stretched, half an hour or 15 minutes. It's usually a lot longer than that. But even if it was that it isn't just allocated to one part of my life, that I, through the consistency of that, can see how it flowers and it unfolds into my daily rhythm as well. So I encourage consistency, because without it, it remains separated. It remains compartmentalized. If you do it once a week, and you can only do it when all of the conditions are perfect, when the kids are out and you're in a good mood, and your perfect yoga teacher or spiritual practitioner is leading the class, then there's no opportunity for it to kind of flood your cells and your synapses and create change that unfolds within your daily existence.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We were talking earlier just briefly around this idea of the flow-on effect, and I'm kind of curious
Mm.
how you may shape or structure or design these practices, these periods of practice, and how much kind of where the inspiration may come from them, and yeah, where the elements may come from to kind of piece together what that flow-on effect may be in an intentional way.
Yeah, what a great question. How do I create my own sadhana? Is really at the core of that, I think. Well, it's very dependent. Sometimes I will create it for myself, and this happens a lot very intuitively based on what's happening in my life at the time, or in my body, or in my mind. So recently I had some whiplash, and I felt as though my nervous system really needed a lot of gentle care. And I could I could sense how just the action that happened in my neck created this energetic follow-on effect. I'm now quite almost hypersensitive to what's happening in my body. But the power in that is that, and the flexibility that I guess I have in my own sadhana, is that I'm not stuck on one practice as being the only practice. So in this particular case, although on the daily I would do a mantra meditation, I would sit upright and I repeat my mantra internally. And this is something that I would do without fail. Right now, as a way of, I guess, resolving the issue, healing, or supporting myself, I don't feel like that practice is supportive. And I've learned as a spiritual practitioner to step out of any guilt or shame that comes from having to shift a sadhana when I know that it comes from a deep wisdom and intuition and inner knowing. I'm not doing it out of laziness. I know that I'm doing it to support myself. So I'm happy to change my sadhana so that at the moment now it includes a yoga nidra practice, and I'll do a lying down guided practice of yoga nidra, and I won't feel any guilt about it or feel like, oh, I should be sitting upright, or I should be doing something else, or I shouldn't even be guided. I should be at a stage where I'm never being guided by anyone. I think, no, right now my nervous system needs that. And so in certain periods of my life, I know because intuitively something is arising, and I create a habit of self-love or self-care, which is supportive at that time. And there are other times when there's nothing particularly pressing going on, or there's nothing really strong in my body or intuition. And so what I will at times do is I have to create a personal sadhana, and that takes a lot of willpower and discipline, I have to say. Willpower and discipline is really at the heart of a lot of yogic practice, but I think that the discipline is very Vedic, and the absorption and the juicy sensory presence is very tantric. And so I like to combine the two. So even if I have a discipline, and it could be chanting mantra, so I could say to myself, okay, let's create a discipline of a month of chanting Gayatri mantra for 108 rounds every day. That could be an example of something I might decide. And I'm often motivated by my students as well. And I bounce off what's going on in their sadhana or the work that I'm teaching. It can be really inspiring for me. And I think that's okay, because I still keep my teaching and my sadhana separate. And when I go into a practice like that, I just have to ensure that I don't get lost in the discipline of it, because then it turns into another thing on your to-do list. And I think for me, the power of moving more towards a tantric path is that even though I've had a lot of Vedic teachings, and I know that personally I have quite a strong inner will and personal sense of discipline, I have to always remember that there needs to be a kind of energy of the heart, a loving energy, a juiciness, a sensory aspect, and a strong, loving intention behind it all to keep it. It's almost like it's like it can become dry and brittle, or it can be kind of like juicy and a bit moist and a bit full of yumminess, right? It's like dry chocolate cake or like really nice, you know, almond mud cake or something. And so for me, even when I have this discipline, I think that I have been fortunate enough to have a lot of tantric teachings in the last 7 or 8 years, 8 years now, that kind of bring a really kind of yummy quality to even having a daily spiritual practice. And it can get lost, believe me. Like I can just sometimes sit down and I find myself doing a mantra and there's no heart and soul behind it, and it still works, right? It still has some kind of positive impact on me. But I know it when I go into it, even with more depth of feeling, that it expands even more. It kind of expands more in my life.